During the 2005 collective bargaining agreement process, Commissioner of the NBA David Stern enacted the one-and-done rule, which states that a player wishing to enter the NBA draft must be 19 years of age or older and be a year removed from high school. The rule, put in place to help both the league and its players, has been shrouded in controversy ever since its introduction, even drawing accusations of racism from some in the NBA community. We're going to do a debate on the pros and cons of the one-and-done rule in order to better understand the issue and analyze the effectiveness of the policy.
I will be arguing that the one-and-done rule should be abolished as it makes a mockery of the collegiate system.
And I will be arguing that the one-and-done rule is perfect the way it is, as it improves the quality of talent entering the NBA and allows for athletes to mature and grow before being thrust into the spotlight.
Before we dive into our debate, we want to give you all a little more information on the history of the one-and-done rule and how it came to be. Spencer Haywood played basketball collegiately at the University of Detroit in the 1970s. After his sophomore season, he decided to turn pro. He signed with the Denver Rockets of the American Basketball Association. The next season, he signed a contract with the NBA's Seattle Supersonics. The issue, though, was at the time of the NBA had a rule requiring that its players be 4 years out of high school before being drafted into the league. For most, this meant that they were drafted after completing college. Haywood challenged this rule in court, and his challenge went all the way to United States Supreme Court. In Haywood versus the NBA, the Supreme Court granted Haywood an injunction allowing him to continue playing for the Supersonics and preventing the NBA from sanctioning the team. After Haywood's case, a significant number of players joined the NBA before completing college.
We're going to organize our debate by focusing in on how the one-and-done rule affects different groups and whether those effects are positive or negative. We will discuss the effects on the athletes themselves, effects on the NBA as a business, and Olivia will conclude by providing some alternatives to the one-and-done rule.
As far as the effect on the student-athlete is concerned, the one-and-done rule incredibly minimizes the value of an education for these athletes. These players are going to school knowing that they are leaving no matter what happens while at school. Take, for instance, Ben Simmons. Simmons, originally from Australia, was at LSU for less than a year. He didn't attend classes and was put on academic probation for the second semester, but was still allowed to play. He clearly didn't care at all about his degree and was just playing along with the system he was forced to be a part of.
But Olivia, as far as the student is concerned, college is about so much more than just an education. These students are gaining valuable life experience and maturing during their year at school. A perfect example of this is Syracuse's own Carmelo Anthony. His year in school allowed him to grow as a person and has led to incredible success in the NBA.
Sending kids to college for 1 year doesn't magically make them better people. The one-and-done rule almost encourages athletes to commit NCAA violations. If athletes are only in school for 8 months, why wouldn't they take the money under the table or let an alumni give them a flat-screen TV?
But all that starts before college. Before the one-and-done rule, players are being scouted by NBA scouts at AAU tournaments in high school. Without the rule in place, these athletes would be forced to grow up much faster than necessary. Without proper support and resources, these players will be making uneducated decisions that may not allow them to get all they could possibly get from their abilities on and off the court.
See, Nick, that's where the NBA comes in. The one-and-done rule doesn't just affect these players, it also affects the sport as a whole. The NBA will be receiving better talent right away that they can mold out of high school.
However, by forcing kids to go to college for a year, the NBA gets a chance to see how these players perform against better quality talent. By allowing players to come into the NBA straight from high school, the talent pool is diluted because more teams are willing to invest in long-term projects. By forcing kids to go to school for a year, you're keeping potential stars out of the D-League. Also, by forcing players to be a year removed from high school, they're given the opportunity to mature. This means fewer on- or off-court incidents, thus keeping star players on the court with much higher frequency.
The NBA is keeping players in school to mature, but how much can 1 year really do? Players have the right to be paid for their talent. Holding them away from the NBA for a year is bad for players and business because people will pay to come see stars. These stars won't be able to join the NBA for an entire calendar year, and that draws more fans to college games instead of the professional level.
Okay, Olivia, at the beginning of this debate, you said the one-and-done rule should be changed. What, if any, are your ideas for a better solution to this issue?
Well, the NFL uses a model where players have to stay in college for 3 years. If you're talking about letting players mature, why not force them to stay in college even longer?
But that's unrealistic. The NFL has stated that its 3-year policy is for safety reasons, not maturity. They just don't want these high school kids getting crushed by the physicality of the NFL. There is no safety issue in the NBA for these 18-year-old athletes.
Okay, so let's look at Major League Baseball. Players are allowed to enter the pros straight from high school, but if they choose to go to college, they have to stay for 3 years. Because of the one-and-done rule, programs can rise and fall like the tide. 1 year, they can make the Final Four and the next lose all their talent and not even make the tournament. Forcing those players that do choose to go to college for longer builds excitement and a more passionate fan base. Even Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, agrees with raising the age limit. He said, "I believe it is in the best interest of the players' union and the league to raise the minimum age. I also believe the college basketball would be better off."
I do like the flexibility of the MLB system, and I think it definitely has its benefits. But what that forces kids to do is make a decision that will affect the rest of their lives. What if a player only needs 1 year in college, or even 2? Is it really fair to chain them to the NCAA for 3 full years just because they didn't think they would make it to the NBA straight out of high school? Baseball can do this because they have the minor leagues. The only places the NBA can stash talent is the D-League and overseas.
Well, there's definitely pros and cons to each side of this argument. I want to make my final conclusion to make one more push against the one-and-done rule. The one-and-done rule needs to be done away with because it is causing more problems than it is solving. It makes a mockery of being a student athlete, so thank you to Ben Simmons and LSU for not even trying to cover up the fact that Simmons never went to class and pointing out the real issues. Talent should be paid, so these basketball players should have the right to go from high school straight to the NBA. There should not be an age limit to get paid for your talents. This isn't the NFL where if you allow an 18-year-old to go up against James Harrison, there will be serious or even fatal consequences. If a player wants to take their chances in making it to the NBA straight out of high school, let them. But if they change their minds, follow the MLB model and say you had your chance to go, but now you will be a student athlete for at least the next 3 years. Doing away with the 10-year-old one-and-done rule will greatly benefit both the NCAA and the NBA.
I believe that the one-and-done rule does not need to be changed because it helps the players in their long-term career aspirations. The argument that the rule devalues a college education is invalid because the recent trend of players going one-and-done is roughly 0.2% of all draft-eligible players. This is not a large enough part of the athlete population to warrant drastic change. The one-and-done rule has increased the skill level of college basketball as well as increased the quality of play in the NBA. Players are forced to mature and grow in their year removed from high school outside of the classroom. This process provides invaluable experience as these athletes enter the professional sphere. I believe the rules in place for the players entering the NBA should not be changed.